Hey there, thanks for tuning into Duck Bricks. I'm Chris, and today we have a somewhat random LEGO review. We'll be taking a look at a very interesting custom buildable figure. In this case, it's from the Lord of the Rings theme. It is the full-on buildable figure of Sauron, the massive major villain of the Lord of the Rings franchise, which was actually created by one of the contestants on LEGO Masters, Aaron Brick Designer, who currently is actually working at the LEGO group today, which I just think is a really cool thing about the model itself. I just saw a picture of the model. I figured I had to build it because it blends together a lot of my favorite things about LEGO building, such as action figures in the Bionicle and CCBS type line, but also integrating a ton of system pieces into the build. It's a really fun build. There's a lot of details to get into, so let's jump right into the review. Alright, and celebrating the recent release of the Rings of Power TV show, today we are reviewing this custom Sauron buildable figure, built by a person who is now an actual official LEGO designer, who actually was featured in the US LEGO Masters show. You can check out all their links and the instructions to build this in the description below. Now this is a truly stunning figure, and to be completely honest, the instructions did actually specify cutting custom capes and cloth for the character itself. Unfortunately, I don't really have the capability to make custom fabric elements at this time, so as of right now, this does not have the custom capes that it was supposed to have, but overall, everything else is pretty much exactly what the original figure was supposed to have, and you can see him here in all his glory. This is one of the most interesting and detailed actual buildable LEGO characters that I've seen, providing a near perfect blend between CCBS as well as brick-built components, the standard Bionicle building system, as well as all sorts of different intricate details here and there. Now, I do want to preface this by saying that this is not the most sturdy of LEGO models. Despite it being built by someone who actually now is an official LEGO designer, this model obviously was not designed to be a standard playable LEGO model. It is very fragile, especially around the top collar here. The very spiky collar is kind of just for display and will break off, and he isn't the most stable on his feet either. You really have to fiddle with him quite a lot to get him in a standing position. But here it is. This is probably the most detailed version of kind of a to-scale Sauron that we've seen as a minifigure type form, because of course he could change and grow in size. So while he might be a little bit oversized to how he appeared in the Peter Jackson films, this is a really cool representation of the Tyrant of Middle-earth himself. So in terms of articulation, I kind of want to cover this similar to how I cover other Bionicle reviews. You can bend the legs front and back a little bit, but you really can't bend this forward past this particular point just because of the way the front skirt-like build is laid out. It simply will just hit the front skirt, so you can't really move the legs further up than that. It's not a huge deal because you really don't have to be posing him beyond this anyway, and of course you can stretch his leg out to the side, which as you can see is a very extreme angle to kind of go around the cape, but that's not really what's intended here. Of course, everything else is mounted on mixel joints, kind of like the side armor skirt pieces here, so those do move alongside the legs. It's just this front one which is a little bit difficult to move around. Now, he does have standard articulation in the knees here, which you can see like so. You can basically just bend that pretty much normally. This is really interesting because it uses the standard CCBS joint on the front of the leg there, as well as additional armor pieces attached on the back via the flick fire missile elements, which is a very interesting parts usage, which I personally haven't really seen in terms of the official design for other models like this, but it works out absolutely great. And of course, the bottom part of the leg is fully brick-built, right alongside a brick-built foot on one of these standard friction ball joints, which is a really smart choice for this model because it needs all the friction it can get. Now, the waist itself can be rotated. It is just mounted on a click hinge. It really can only rotate by this much because it is restricted by the side waist capes, but to be honest, I think it's a pro that it cannot rotate more than this because this is pretty much the only realistic range of motion you would actually want to have. As for the head itself, it is mounted on a mixel ball joint, so that can really go in every sort of direction here. Of course, it is a little bit finicky. You do have to pay attention to the way the blades are arranged on the head to not knock stuff over, but for the most part, it is quite good. Now moving onwards, you can see the arms can be rotated up and down and back and forth. There are some conflicts with the way that this particular armor piece is designed, but of course you can really get a good range of motion out of them, no real complaints here. And what's really great is you can actually bend the elbows pretty much all angles that you would want thanks to the way the design of the joints is set up. The hands themselves are mounted on ball joints here, so you can really just move the hands back and forth and up and down in a standard configuration. And one of my favorite aspects of the model itself is that each of the hands are built slightly differently, this one specifically to accommodate him being able to hold the ring in his grasp. So that is a very cool feature, which of course is unfortunately belayed by some additional aspects of the arms that do easily break off, such as this piece right here does tend to fall off quite easily. You can see the way that it's mounted right here, it kind of just attaches on by the one point, and it's very easy to kind of knock that off. But overall, this is actually a really solid build and honestly looks more fragile than it actually is. He holds the staff by basically no attachment point. It is really used for the staff or club-like weapon element here, which does feel a little bit short for him to wield, but I guess it makes sense in universe for him to have this particular weapon. What I really do appreciate are the usage of the special drum-lacquered silver elements, which are scattered throughout the body itself. You can see all sorts of different very shiny metallic silver pieces that really do feel like different plates of armor, which makes the aesthetics of this character one of the best. But of course, speaking of aesthetics, I think it's time to kind of talk a little bit about that. This is a very menacing buildable character, and I think it's one of the coolest designs that you could have come up with for an all-silver armored character. Starting off from the top here, kind of zooming in closer to the top of the figure here, I love the usage of the multiple iterations of the Ninjago 2019 weapon attachment piece. You can see that these are really taking advantage of the special weapons pack, which was introduced for Ninjago Hunted, but it uses the short knives as spikes here, the short swords on the top of the crown, as well as the standard katanas, and even some of the longer, more stylized type of swords from that particular blade pack being used to form the helmet itself. All in all, the head is basically a masterpiece in how to actually form the visage of a buildable character. This is a very menacing looking helmet. You can really clearly see where the red eyes are shining through, and that makes this one of the coolest designs possible. Of course, going onwards to the side, we can see that there are a lot of other spike-like elements on the back here, like the axes, and again, using the Ninjago weapon attachment piece to fill up some gaps in the elbow articulation, which previously would have been pretty gappy. As you can see, there probably would have been just a very unsightly hole there, but thankfully there is now something filling it up slightly, even if it isn't the best. Of course, moving onwards to the legs down here, it does tend to feel a little bit basic with the standard CCBS components being used for the chest plate and the front legs here, but honestly, basic doesn't mean bad, and I think it works out really well, and I love the blend between the standard metallic silver Nexo Knights wedge pieces, as well as kind of how they fit over the actual build for the torso itself. All in all, the aesthetics of this character are absolutely fantastic. And obviously, despite not every single piece of this being made out of pure silver elements, almost everything else, just in the way that it's laid out, really feels like it is fully laid out in a fully silver design. I really appreciate and respect the way that all sorts of different layers of color blocking have been used for the model itself, from the inner black of the inside part of the armor to some of the more dark and light grays, ultimately going outwards to the silver. This is a masterclass in terms of color blocking and the way the armor feels layered and built on top of each other, and is one of easily the coolest models that I've seen out of the entire Lord of the Rings franchise. All in all, this is a really fun buildable model. It definitely isn't for everyone and definitely is supposed to be mostly a display piece rather than a play piece, but if you want to get in the spirit of the new Rings of Power series, the instructions are free. You can download them at the link below and get building with this very custom, articulated, fantastic LEGO Sauron figure. Alright, and with that, we have summed up our look at the custom LEGO Sauron MOC from Lord of the Rings. Let me know down in the comments below if you like it, do you dislike it, or if any of you actually built this yourselves. Instructions are actually free to download, which is amazing. You can check out the link in the description below to actually get those free instructions. Really great how they actually provide those for free. It's a really great model, and I would highly recommend giving it a build. With that, we have summed up this random review. Thank you all so much for tuning into Duckbricks. I hope you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe for even more LEGO news, reviews, discussion, and analyses coming your way very soon. Thanks so much, and bye-bye for now.